NASCAR, and this is something I really want to touch on, and this kind of factors in Atlanta as well. They are really making a case for themselves, intentionally or not, for shorter races. Now, obviously, the crown jewel events, Daytona 500,
Don't touch them.
Coke 600, Southern 500, we could throw that in, and Brickyard,
Okay.
although I think that should just be completely gone. You got to keep those at their scheduled
Yeah.
distance. Those are but because of the tradition. But the Coke 600, it's always been branded as the endurance race. It's the race that's going to test the driver and the equipment. Well, the equipment has pretty much been perfected. I'm not saying that there aren't any mechanical failures. I'm not saying that there aren't any engine blowups anymore. But if we're being honest with ourselves, it's kind of the idea of the endurance race is kind of obsolete. Like even the 24 hours of Le Mans, since about 1998, maybe 99, it's been a 24-hour sprint as opposed to a 24-hour enduro.
Yeah.
And that same rings true for NASCAR because these cars are they're built like tanks now.
So what I want to see out of an endurance race is survival of the fittest. I That doesn't mean I want to see the more financially um, the more well-funded teams succeed, because that's probably what's going to happen. What it means
Yeah.
is I want to see cars struggling. Like, you know what? I saw the idea. Someone was joking around saying, "Let's do 1,000 laps at Bristol and have a great time." And or maybe it was Martinsville rather. And I thought about it, and you'd have to do brake changes. You'd have to do some work to your cars for sure. Um, and I don't need that in I, I don't need that kind of endurance racing in NASCAR necessarily. Now, it's tough because I love the idea of a 600-mile race. I I don't want it to go away. The Coke 600 for me is a special event, being at
Yeah.
Charlotte, being on the same day, generally speaking, as the Indy 500 and Monaco GP. I don't want it to change, um, but I want to see cars struggle to make it to the finish. I don't want 10 cars to make it to the finish. I don't want
Yeah.
absolute chaos, but there should absolutely be some engine failures, some problems with these cars that arise because they're being put through such a challenge.
Which unfortunately, like I said, that's just not you're just not going to get that nowadays because
No,
they're so finely tuned. But obviously, you have to, for tradition's sake, you have to keep the Coke 600.
yes.
But for these other races that aren't crown jewel races that you can kind of just take or leave, like the pure Michigan 400.
Ugh.
What is a race at Michigan doing being 400 miles? The Pocono, isn't there a 500-mile race at Pocono?
Not this
Why?
year, not this year, but I think there
But
was at one
typically, yeah.
point. Yeah, 400 I think is the normal now. But how about this? Why are we doing 500 miles twice a year at Texas?
Thank you. Yes.
That's nonsensical. I mean, I'm completely fine with 325, or maybe not 325s, but 350s. You know, what? And I've been saying this, Nick. You know this from the day we started this show. Okay, what needs to happen is NASCAR needs to estimate the number of cautions they expect. They need to estimate how long a race is going to last if it goes green. Take into account that number of cautions and make sure that their races are just long enough to make it to roughly 2 hours and 45 minutes, but
Yes.
overtime and cautions will not bring them over 3 hours. That's what they need to do. And if they can do that, people can sit through a football game, which I can't always. Even 2 hours and 45 minutes isn't that much. If they can get that right, that would be great for TV. Now, I understand NASCAR cares very much about its in-person audiences, the people that come to the racetracks. And I actually understand that point of view where, for example, if I went to Bristol in 2018 and I saw a 2-hour race, I would have felt cheated. I drove 14 hours down to North Carolina, stayed at my uncle's house. We drove the next day to Bristol. That night, we drove back after the race to his house, and then the next day, guess what? I got up and drove the 14 hours home. Actually, we took 2 days to drive down and 2 days to drive up, just because that's a hell of a drive. But I would have felt cheated to do all of that for 2 hours of racing.
Oh yeah.
So
And
on TV, sorry Nick, but on TV these things are definitely better shorter. But that means NASCAR has to be okay with losing some of their audience in person. And with attendance numbers already going down, NASCAR considering implementing some sort of amount where you have to get this percentage of your seats filled or face consequences, you know, they have to really figure out what's going to be more important to them in the future. The TV audience, which is who brings in the money, those big TV contracts, or is it going to be the in-person audiences that they really want to take care of?
yeah, and absolutely right. And Bristol is one of those things where I think especially for the night race, obviously you keep that 500. Although it's not
Yeah,
500 miles, it's 500 laps.
laps, right?
But it. I've been to probably 4 or 5 Loudon races since I
Three
was a
hundred
kid.
miles, right?
Yeah, those are 300 miles, and then those things, I remember those dragging on a little bit. So I think, granted, I was a kid, so it feels a lot
Right,
longer.
right.
But I think 300 miles, that's the sweet spot for a lot of these races. It like the mile and a half, especially like Texas, no business being 500 miles.
No,
You're not a
no,
crown
no.
jewel event. You're not. I don't think there was a time when Texas, it was like the largest purse in NASCAR.
Other than the 500, yep.
Yeah, but I doubt that's a thing anymore.
No,
So what business does it have being 500 miles twice a year? Get out of here.
it
No,
doesn't. And I have a feeling SMI and Eddie Gossage are the reason, but I'm gonna skip over
of
that
course.
and move on. I'll tell you what, Nick. Let's take a short break here. We will be right back with the race week rundown after these messages. And welcome back to the race week rundown. As usual, I'm Ben Brophy.
I'm Nick Hewer.
And we are here talking more NASCAR. And I actually want to get into the IndyCar race in just a second, Nick. But first, let's continue on what we were just discussing, which is shorter races in NASCAR. So we both agree races need to be shorter. Let's remember, Pocono has 2 races coming up that are 325 and 350 miles back-to-back days. And I think that's going to be a great change of pace.
Yeah, I mean, Pocono.
I have a special place in my heart for Pocono. I like the Poconos. I like that area of the country. It's somewhere that I used to vacation growing up. And so I have a special place in my heart for that track. I want to go to that track. But less horsepower ruined it because they don't shift anymore. The track has lost its character because
was a
of
really
that.
cool part of the track.
Yeah.
And the repave as well.
I don't have any reference. I don't remember when they repaved it. Again, I'm a little
Would have been like 2011, 2012.
Yeah.
I think I remember 2010 had the old surface.
So I'd like to go back
and they didn't have
that.
fences on the backstretch either. So Casey Kane almost went into the trees, but that's for another day.
Wow. All right. Wow.
Yeah. Pocono used to be wild and still is pretty wild.
Well, I mean, it's especially those IndyCar races are crazy there.
Yeah. It's unfortunate that they're not going back, but it's whatever.
I wouldn't be surprised if Roger Penske didn't bring him back there.
I mean, yeah, that is true. I forgot about that. But yeah, certainly Pocono, another one of those tracks that needs shorter races. For the love of God, please.
Yeah.
Here's the thing about NASCAR. You don't want to go the way of baseball, where people just completely, unless you're a hardcore fan. Let's be honest.
Yeah.
Does anybody sit down and watch a regular season baseball game unless you're going to the thing? No.
I love spending.
And even then,
dude, I love spending the amount of time it takes to get a baseball game in at the game. I will never watch it on TV. And you know what? Each team gives me 160 opportunities a year to watch them on TV. And you know how many I take? 0. I don't have time for that. All right? And I barely...
And even during the playoffs.
I'll watch the World Series.
Yeah. But, like, if it's your team are you really going to watch anything if it's not the finals, if it's not the World Series itself? Are you really going to watch anything other than Game 7 or an elimination game? Probably not.
No.
And that's what you don't want with NASCAR is that these races go on too long, like baseball goes on way too long because these pitchers need to, I don't know, pray to their higher astrology god or whatever it is they need to do in between pitches. Anyway, but you don't want NASCAR to come into the same box where it's just
Right.
going on way too long. It's boring. Younger audiences like me, like I've been around a long time for NASCAR. I've been watching for about 2004, almost 16 years, right? I'm 19 now. And even I, the wear and tear that being a NASCAR fan for that long has taken on me, I don't want to pay attention to a 4-hour race. I got stuff to do. Okay? I will sit down and watch it because I have to be able to, do this thing.
Right.
But you got to shorten it. It's just, it creates a sense of urgency. Like we saw with the midweek races, I thought for the most part, they were at the very least solid.
Yeah.
It kept me engaged, certainly,
Yep.
because there's a higher sense of urgency with the drivers. They want to they're pushing harder, they want to make moves. Crew chiefs, they got to think on their feet more. And I think with shortening the races, NASCAR could also potentially look, I don't know what the likelihood of this happening is, probably slim to none, but taking away the stages, and I'm not saying take away stages as in awarding points at certain checkpoints throughout the race. I like that idea myself.
Take away the
I think I've talked
cautions.
about this before.
Right.
Take away the cautions.
Yeah.
It disrupts the whole flow of the race. Just let it play out as it is. Because sometimes you potentially end up with a really exciting battle for the lead, and then it's like, oh, caution. And